Welcome back. Let's take a look at the energies of April 13th through the 19th for 2025. This is potentially an intense week, just like the past couple of weeks, especially March, were particularly intense. I want to take a look at the astrology really quick, and I've got my notes up here, which is why you hear me clicking around and looking around the screen and not at you. So something that I neglected to mention last week is that Mercury went direct last week on the 9th. Currently it is transiting direct through Pisces, and this is Mercury doing some research into these dreams that it would potentially like to realize. This can be on a personal level. This can be on a local level. Let's say, for instance, your local religious community is putting some plans together for what they want to do for the summer, for instance, or this can be on a macro level where, let's say, for instance, a nation is planning what it wants to do to accomplish some dreams, okay? Couldn't be the United States, any positive dreams, but keep in mind that I just gave positive examples, and they don't have to be positive dreams. And remember that Pisces also rules delusions as well as illusions. Think of things that keep us separate from the truth, from the reality. Pisces can be about intuition and listening to our sacred intuition. It is a deeply karmic sign. It's a great time to relieve some karmic debt if you have Pisces energy, 12th house energy, somewhere in your birth chart. But this can also be an energy that can be used for low vibrational things. So just keep aware of this. You may have some cool things planned, or you might be doing some research into some cool things that you want to accomplish in the future. But keep in mind that other people around you may be thinking about what it is they can do to cause harm to others, okay? And I say that because this is a very fiery, very Mars, Aries kind of heavy energy season. We'll talk about that in just a second, but later on, Mercury is going to transit back into Aries on the 17th of March. And this is where, ideally speaking, this is where people start to take action on those dreams that they had imagined of starting a small business, starting a YouTube channel, starting to be an influencer, for instance, something to do with communication. If that's something that you've dreamed about, this is a great time to actually take action on those things. But once again, keep in mind that there are people who will willingly use this energy for low vibrational activities, and they don't have to deliberately know anything about astrology in order for that energy to still blow back on everybody who's around them. Just again, be aware, Mercury can be a pretty crazy sign, especially when it's connected to other air signs, connected to other to fire signs. Those are ones that they tend to do pretty well, and even if those energies are opposing. Okay, sometimes they can be the perfect kind of enemies, right? Let's just say that we just need to be cautious at this time. There is still the risk for terrorist attacks. If you're especially in the United States, for the USA Collective, just to be cautious and aware of the possibility of terroristic attacks at protests, especially in the next couple of weeks. Aries is going to be a really powerful aspect this particular year, and so is there's also going to be a lot of heavy air energy that's going to complicate things, okay? Mercury is some heavy air energy, and it is interacting with Aries starting on the 17th. Just be aware that sometimes that you may want to lash out, or that someone else may want to lash out, and just give that incident some space. Give yourself some space. If you feel like something's coming on, just give the situation some wide berth, if that makes any sense, okay? Something else we need to talk about is that Venus is stationing direct in Pisces on the 14th. So Venus has been retrograde. She has went through a kind of rebirth setting when she transited through Aries, basically. An old era died with Venus. She retrograded into Pisces. will be renewed, will finish her renewal process on the 14th, and then she'll start transiting through Aries once again after that. A phoenix rising through the flames, ready to start a new cycle altogether. So this may have something to do with romantic relationships. You may have decided to take a new temporary path of singleness, and this Aries Pisces retrograde season, retrograde direct season, has cemented your willingness to pause and take time for yourself as opposed to pouring energy into others. But this doesn't have to be about romantic relationships either. This can have to do with the relationships that you have with friends, that you have with acquaintances. And it's not just personal either. This can have something to do with diplomatic relationships between nations. So when it comes to the USA Collective, this is potentially a good thing. This is potentially a bad thing. Remember that humans have free will, and the astrology just creates the environment for certain interactions to possibly happen, and that it's humans' free will to choose high vibrational or low vibrational activities. When I think of Venus in Aries, after having gone through Pisces, I think of the United States' relationship with Canada, and how there's the real possibility that Canada may become more firm in their conviction that they need to separate and stay away from the United States when it comes to a whole bunch of ties that both Americans and Canadians have taken advantage of and have taken for granted now for decades. A couple of generations, a few generations at least. And this is earth-shattering. We don't feel it right now because the consequences haven't started to reach the everyday little person just doing their everyday thing. It will. And that's something that I see quite possibly happening around this Venus going direct, transitioning to Aries and starting a new era. This might be Canada choosing to start a new era separate from the United States. And now keep in mind that I already read on this in my Pluto in Aquarius video, the Canadian edition. I saw specifically in April last year that Canada was going to break away from the United States. And at the time I said, whatever the United States did, it must have been huge for Canada to break away. And look at what we've got. Okay? That's just an example. This works on Venus in Aries, and in fact, all astrological transits work on the personal, the local, and the macro level, okay? So something else that we need to discuss in terms of war and fighting and coming first and defending energies, we will have Mars moving into Leo on the 19th, okay? So already Mars has been in Cancer, and this is someone who is very family oriented and, for better or for worse, is willing to do low or high vibrational activities in order to protect what they perceive to be their family or their national identity. Ego is pretty strong with Cancer when it comes to identifying with the collective, whether that's family, very close friends, let's say for instance a fraternity, for instance, or it could have to do with patriotism. Mars in Cancer is heavily associated with patriotism, love for country, that kind of thing. So as we move through the final degrees of Mars in Cancer, be aware that there may be some final manifestations of that particular defensive, patriotic, family-oriented, possibly even violent energy coming through this particular week, especially as it moves into Leo, a very fiery sign. The thing with fiery Mars is that when it's going through a watery sign like Cancer, to a degree it is inhibited. But when Mars moves into another fire sign like Leo, for instance, that's potentially a very warlike energy. It has a lot of fight to it. It wants to be first. Aries wants to be first, and so does Leo. Mars wants to be first. So does the Sun, okay? These are planets, these are zodiac signs that love being first. So keep that in mind. And there's going to be the potential for a lot of people pushing to get to the front of the line, possibly on a local level. You may encounter that on a personal level, not literally someone pushing you aside in line, but in the sense that other needs get met before yours. Mars is not the happiest necessarily in Cancer. It's kind of hobbled in Cancer because Cancer is associated with more maternal instincts, if you will, and that's not something that Mars always gets along with well. But in Leo, that's something different entirely. Mars gets to be unleashed in Leo, so keep that in mind. There may be some people who fight for the most amazing causes, and they say that they are willing to step up and be leaders for those causes. Fantastic. But be aware that some of those causes might be low vibrational and some might be high vibrational. It's going to depend on the individual. But we might see the rise of some leaders for some particular causes at this time, or they may start gathering energy that they use later on down the line, possibly this year or next year, to actually start to influence some movements, okay? Keep that Mars and Leo transit in mind for just a second. We're going to come back to it. I want to wish Tauruses a happy upcoming birthday. We have the sun moving into Taurus on the 20th. This is an earthy energy, so this is someone who loves the finer things in life. Venus does well in Taurus. This is someone who, or this is a group of people even, who enjoy the comforts in life, who enjoy feeling nice, feeling clothes, for instance, who may enjoy eating, who may enjoy wine, who may enjoy working around the house, for instance, who may enjoy gardening, the typical, stereotypical earthy things, okay? So keep in mind that the stubbornness, the even obstinacy of a Taurus is needed at some times, and at other times a Taurus needs to go with the flow. So if it is your Taurus season, it's your sun sign season, happy birthday. Hope you have a wonderful solar return. Now we come back to that Mars in Leo. So Mars in Leo begins opposing Pluto in Aquarius on the 19th of April. So a lot of astrologers warn people to be cautious and just be situationally aware when it comes to Mars Pluto oppositions, okay? With Pluto in Aquarius and with Mars in Leo wants to say that it's going to fight for this particular cause, and Pluto in Aquarius kind of encourages this rebellious aspect to that me first. I will be the leader of this particular battle, this particular fight. I will lead the way. I will be the martyr. I will be the soldier. I'll be the captain or what, the general who leads the charge for this particular cause. Potentially this has the ability for high vibrational activities once again, in the sense that there may be some people who plan some genuinely effective protests that may have nothing to do with even getting out on the street. But it may have, well, ideally, fiery signs should be mostly concerned with their spiritual aspects. Think of the holy flame, for instance, the holy fire within us all, that we all have, whether we tamp it down or we encourage it. Okay? So ideally, this is the time for some spiritual leaders to go through some difficult circumstances, with Pluto in Aquarius saying, it's time for you to get out of your comfort zone and do something different with your life to rise up and become a spiritual leader, ideally speaking. But keep in mind that some people may take this once again to that terroristic activity kind of level. That's another kind of rebellious activity, another cause that somebody may fight for and believe in it sincerely, and do a whole shitload of damage that they may or may not regret later on, okay? This is not the time to live in fear, I just want to say that, but it is the time to be situationally aware, to not be provoked if someone attempts to provoke you to a fight. That's the time to detach from your ego, from your feelings of being provoked, and it's the time to separate yourself. Ultimately, completely detaching from the ego is what will set us free to have the best kind of Mars and Leo transit that we can ultimately have, okay? That's when the spiritual flame will burst forth and create some incredible spiritual leaders if they are stoked enough, if they have had enough of an ego death, if they've let go of enough of their ego, if they're willing to jump into that very difficult responsibility. That's a heavy responsibility to carry, but there are people out there who are willing to do that, and this transit could create that too. Once again, these transits are energies that can be used for a wide variety of activities for which humans have free will, okay? I hope that I'm making sense. I want to move into the card portion of my particular weekly energy readings. Normally, I do a tarot and an oracle card reading. Today, I'm going to be working with Lenormand exclusively. Sorry about the blowout lighting, if you will. This is the 7th Sphere Lenormand by Tina Gong at Labyrinthos. I shuffle until Spirit asks me to stop, and then we'll look at the energies. We have secrets book, things that are hidden that you need to have acquired a certain level of knowledge to reach whatever this particular book has to reveal to you. Looks like some secrets might be revealed potentially this week and next. Just be aware that some things may be coming to the surface, and I would imagine that with Venus in transiting back through Pisces into Aries, starting a new era, that some things might be revealed when it comes to matters that relate to Venus, such as romantic relationships and diplomatic relationships. But especially when it comes to women's rights, there may be some more things that trigger something like another Me Too movement, possibly. Okay? It could be something else entirely, but something's going to be revealed this particular week, and those energies are going to tumble into next week. That particular card came from the bottom of the deck. I'm going to be doing a 3x3 spread, a Lenormand portrait spread, they call it, and I'm going to start building the top row. This is the anchor, permanence, stability, bringing a ship into harbor where the passengers can disembark and go see touristy stuff, where the ship can refuel, get new provisions for the rest of the journey. This is a place potentially of abundance, but it is definitely a place of stability and permanence. So whatever these secrets reveal, there's something that's quite permanent about whatever is revealed, possibly about the consequences. We're going to continue to build that top row, and we've got the coffin landing alongside the anchor, and I'll be sure to take a picture of this before so that you can see what I see. But this is about something being buried deeply. It's about the end of an era too, but whatever's buried deeply, even if it was dead at the time that it was buried, rises up again, something different, okay? I'm getting kind of a judgment card, tarot card kind of feel, in the sense that those were bodies that were once buried, but then the angel summons them with his trumpet. It's time to go. It's time for a whole new era. It's time to rise up. So these are deeply buried secrets that once they see the light of day, they transform everything around this particular situation, and it causes people to see the people involved with this situation in a whole new way. And from the top, we've got key. This is revolutionary. That's not surprising with that Pluto in Aquarius energy. This is highly rebellious, revolutionary. Times are a changing kind of energy, okay? So expect that. Key is landing in the future column, so be aware that this is going to gradually gather energy. It's going to blow up in people's faces. It's going to be embarrassing, is what I'm getting from Spirit. egg on our faces. This is about the USA Collective, okay? I apologize for the ethnocentricity of this particular video. I've lived in the United States my whole life, so that's where I'm speaking from, the place that I'm most experienced with, okay? Building the second row, building the past column, we've got the heart landing underneath the anchor, sitting next to the book. These are relationship secrets. These are things that once we were friends, quite possibly with these people, or at least we had strong feelings of compassion of relationship with these particular people, but there were secrets underneath this good, stable relationship that we probably took for granted. And landing on the other side of book, going into the future column, we've got clouds. This is about not seeing something clearly. We didn't see how clearly stable this particular revolution was. This was deeply buried. We thought that deeply buried meant that it wasn't coming back, and yet here it is coming back to kick us in the ass, to surprise everybody and make things worse for the USA Collective. It's quite possible that things become quite rough this week when it comes to getting groceries. If you can start a victory garden, so to speak, if you can start a situation where even if you live in an apartment, if you can grow some of your own food and get connected to community gardens and farmers markets, that would be for the best. But this is the time to be aware that some of our grocery lines might be disrupted in some of the worst ways possible. That in the sense that these have far-reaching effects, in the sense that this doesn't get fixed immediately, and some of these might not be fixed for months, these disrupted grocery store lines, okay? Just be aware of that. Don't live in fear, but do live with situational awareness and with preparedness, okay? We have child landing underneath the heart in the past column. This is a certain naivete when it comes to it. This is taking a certain level of stability for granted. It's always going to be there. It was there for my dad. It was there for my granddaddy. Why wouldn't it be there for me? This is a new era that we're living in. Pluto and Aquarius is really going to drive that home for a lot of people, and it's going to make a lot of people genuinely uncomfortable. So I live in a part of the United States where a lot of these people in, I'm going to say East Texas, got TV back in the 1960s, and they've not changed as a culture since then. I mean, they are stuck back in the early 19 to mid 1960s, literally, culturally. When they communicate with you, they feel like they come out of a different time period. People like that are not going to have the luxury of getting to sit back in a whole different dead decade. They're going to be forced to live in the moment, and for a lot of people, they're not going to want to live through that, okay? I've said in several videos before this that we are going to see suicide rates climb. Just be aware of this, because there are a lot of people who don't have the emotional, spiritual, mental intelligence to handle what they have coming here in the United States. Pluto in Aquarius marks the end of an era for the United States, and quite possibly this could lead to the United States no longer being united. Again, let's not live in fear, but let's be prepared for that kind of possibility. Coming next to child, we've got the ring, and it's landing in the present column. This is something that has been broken. This ring has been sawed through, quite possibly. This was a cycle that repeated over and over, but this child broke the cycle. This ring should have been pretty damn indestructible. Rings are not easily destroyed. You do have to saw at them. You do need some good tools in order to cut them open. So this was a relationship that was difficult to break, and yet something that the United States did broke this particular commitment, this particular cycle that the United States took advantage of and took for granted. And so now some things get released to the public, open to the public, that normally would have been kept secret, because It's trade secrets, it's good economic etiquette between countries and nations and all that kind of stuff. And now all of that just gets released out into the open in some particular way. And it's going to shock a lot of people. And it's going to make quite possibly a lot of conservative people upset. Possibly. Allegedly for entertainment purposes only, okay? The last card is not a great card. It's the Whip. And it lands in the future column. And this is about this being a very harsh wake-up call indeed. That nobody's going to be able to afford the luxury of being naive, sheltered, comfortable, emotionally, mentally, spiritually immature. That's not a luxury that's going to be on the table being offered anymore. That this is going to lead to conflict. War is associated with this, but think, this is blood, okay? This, think about what it's like to be hit. Well, not that you've ever known quite likely. But think about like the old school, movies and TV shows that would show people getting hit with these like old whips, these old-fashioned whips, right? This is going to be a harsh wake-up call that people are watching out for. People are asleep at the wheel and they don't want to wake up because waking up would be painful, because then they would have to realize that there's nothing that they can do about this. That they can maybe affect a few small things around them, but on a macro level, the choices have been already made for them. So if they wake up, they have to realize that. So they stay asleep so they don't have to realize that. I don't know that that's going to be a luxury that's afforded to people anymore. You might encounter them in denial, but that doesn't mean that they aren't having an internal crisis. And when people bottle up their feelings of internal crisis and despair, those are people who get desperate and quite possibly do desperate, even violent things. Again, don't live in fear, but do walk in awareness and general situational awareness, okay? If you see somebody in great distress, maybe or maybe not, it's a good time to try to help them or call people who can help them, okay? And that's just an example. You may not encounter that kind of situation at all. Something's going to be revealed this week that's going to create a situation where we are forced to deal with a lot of conflict for a long time. Here's the thing. I've got anchor, book, and whip. When it comes to future influences, that's literally about a stable long-term conflict, a stable long-term war, quite possibly. I would like to be wrong with this particular case. And where some of these past influences came from with the key, with the book, with the child, is that our naivete created this revolution. It's like the people around us, a lot of our allies, kind of helped create this coddled sense that the United States is the biggest, the most in charge, and that everybody should follow its lead, that it's an example to be followed, that kind of thing. And there's more to it, that there's things that a lot of these nations have been discussing behind the United States' back when it comes to how the United States behaves on the world stage, that we're going to have to see and realize for ourselves. And it's going to be a major wake-up call. We're going to be forced to see ourselves the same way that our allies have kind of seen the United States now for a while. They're our allies, but they wish that we would behave better before this started to kick off. And now they're just tired of our shit. They're tired of the USA collective shit. And I wonder if they aren't going to cut us off even further. If they're not going to say, okay, here is your isolationist little world, United States. Enjoy it. And I wonder if that isn't going to create that stage for that long-term conflict that I see with the anchor and with the whip together. Everything I said here is allegedly for entertainment purposes only. Please don't give up. If anything that I said today distressed you enough that you felt like, I'm just going to give up and be a hermit, please don't get to that stage. Do take a break for yourself. But we need spiritually sensitive people like yourself fighting these particular fights. They are worth fighting for. Even if you know that your cause may lose. Even if you know it's the right cause and it's going to lose. The fact that you fought for that cause to begin with is what gets you divine favor and offloads any karmic debts that you may have had from past lifetime. Not saying that you do, okay? Thank you for listening to this particular point. I hope that you have a great rest of your week. Please stay cautious, but don't live your life in fear either. I hope you have a great day. Take care.